Personally, there are two types of people I value a lot and I always like to keep in my life. And the first category of people that I value a lot are people who have good answers, people who I can approach with questions that I have, questions that disturb me, and I'm seeking some level of clarity for, and I can approach them and they can reach deep down into their wealth of knowledge and wisdom and understanding and spirituality, and they can give me really good answers. I value those people who I can talk to and be vulnerable with, and they just have a way of just coming up with the right answers. I value those people. Second category of people that I truly value are people who come to me with good questions. People who come with good questions. People who are able to look at things and question things and, can come to me with questions that I really think, oh, why do you think I will have an answer to this question? Very humbling. But then people who can come to me with really good questions and can force me to be in a place where I'll have to really dig deep down into myself and into my soul and try to answer the question. I feel these two groups of people are very important to have in your life. People with answers and people with questions. Good answers, good questions. The people with good answers always help you find clarity, and the people with good questions always help you find wisdom. It's so important for me to surround myself with people like that. And so when I have friends, the way I judge my friends is this person someone that I can go to and ask questions? Or is this person someone that pushes me to a place where I dig deep down for answers and helps me to find wisdom stored up in me? Yesterday I was talking with a young friend of mine, and this is why I like 20-something-year-olds and people in their 20s and early 30s, because they are that part in their life where they begin to really, really question things. And a lot of them are not scared to ask questions. They're not scared to go there. People my age that are in their 40s have become so rigid that they do not even, it seems like they don't even desire answers anymore. They are just, they are ready to settle with how they are, so they don't question anymore. So I feel it's very refreshing when I get to engage with a lot of young people, young men, young ladies in their 20s and in their early 30s. And yesterday, I got a question from one of my young friends, and she was sharing her personal experience with me about how she got some clarity in her life about a step to take in her life. And she was saying, the funny thing is, after getting this clarity, it just seems like a lot of, self-doubt and questioning just started to come in after the clarity. It just seems like a lot of asking herself, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And so it seemed like there was a lot of self-doubt coming after clarity, which she was very sure within her was God leading her. It was her. She was sure that it was God talking to her about this huge step to take. But then after being sure that it was God, there was now another voice coming to really ask her whether she was really sure if it was God. But then when she narrated the event, it was obvious that it was a spiritual leading. But you would expect that after clarity, we will just move forward. But that's not how it usually goes with clarity. After clarity, most times comes a period of anxiety. Clarity is always followed up by anxiety. That's why clarity can be a big burden, a very big burden. A lot of people say they seek clarity, but my question to them is, do you have the courage to follow up on what you want to be clear about? Do you have the courage? You know, I talk about this movie, A Few Good Men. Incredible movie. Stars Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Kevin Bacon, Demi Moore. Star-studded movie. And it's an old movie, but it's a great movie. And in the part of the movie, Tom Cruise is a lawyer. He's a lawyer in the army, in the U.S. Army. I think in the Navy. You understand? But then, the end of the movie, he was cross-examining Jack Nicholson and was asking him to tell him the truth about something. And there's this standout line that Jack Nicholson tells him, says, "You can't handle the truth." That's the thing about clarity. The truth, a lot of times, can be very heavy, and a lot of us are not ready for it. Clarity can be a burden. But that's not really where I'm going. Where I'm going right today is to let you know that once you have clarity, a period of anxiety follows it. Especially if you have spiritual clarity, where you are somebody that is spiritual enough to know that God is speaking to you. And God speaks to you, and it's evident. You know that this thing is not ordinary. This leading I have is not ordinary. This voice I hear is not ordinary. I know it is God's leading. What happens a lot of times after hearing God's voice is that you hear the voice of the devil. When God is done talking, the devil comes and takes the mic. The devil is always the next speaker after God. He's always the next speaker. He never precedes God. He always comes after. That's what the devil does. And that's why when God gives you clarity, the devil comes and speaks right after. So one of the signs that God is speaking to you is what happens right after. If the devil doesn't come speaking, then question whether God has really spoken to you. And that's what I was telling my young friend yesterday, that a lot of times after clarity comes a period of anxiety, of self-doubt, of questioning. It has always been the model from the beginning of time. And that's why if you are a Christian or you're familiar with the Bible has laid down this template since the beginning of time, from Adam and Eve down to the time of Jesus. It has always been the dynamics of things. God speaks, and then the devil comes and says his own mind. God gives clarity, and the devil comes to bring anxiety concerning the clarity you have. And today I'm going to talk about 5 sources or 5 questions that bring anxiety after God has given you clarity. 5 questions. Examples from the Bible through which the devil brings anxiety when God has clearly spoken to us. The first thing is, when God speaks to you, and tells you what he wants you to do and gives you a leading, a lot of people, one of the first questions they have is, are you sure you heard God right? Are you sure you heard God right? I'm sure that's what God was trying to tell you. And this is something that we see in the story of Adam and Eve. That's why I said this thing is as old as, first man. God told Adam and Eve the guiding principles of the garden. What to eat, what not to eat, where to go, where not to go. It was clear. It was as clear as day. They heard God like you can hear me in this podcast right now. It wasn't an abstract hearing, it was a clear hearing. But then, sometime later, as I said, when God speaks, the next speaker is always the devil. The devil came with a question. Are you sure? Did God really tell you? Did he really tell you not to do this? Did he really tell you? And this brought anxiety within man. And man started to think, did he really tell us? Did we misinterpret? Did we misinterpret? Did he really tell us? Is he really open with us? Some of you right now are in that part of your life where God has told you something. And that's the anxiety the devil is bringing to you now, telling you, did God really tell you to stop going to that place? Did God really tell you not to date that person? Did God really tell you not to take that job? Did God really tell you not to go on that trip or to travel? Did God really tell you? Did you hear God right? I experienced this when I was meant to come back, when I went to study in Canada, and I felt a strong leading. It was strong. It was a strong leading. I knew I was meant to come back to Nigeria. It was clear. You see, God's voice is gentle but clear. It's clear. We were designed to hear God's voice. And I knew God was telling me to come back to Nigeria. But then immediately I heard God's voice. The next speaker came up telling me, are you sure? Are you sure you heard right? Are you sure? Does it make any sense? Are you sure you heard right? You tell you to come back to Nigeria. Are you sure God is not telling you to leave where you are and go to Toronto or go to Calgary? Are you sure it was Nigeria you heard? Are you sure not saying to go to another country, go to the US? Are you sure you heard God right? That brought a lot of anxiety for a while. A lot of anxiety. I was thinking, but I was clear. If I'm honest with myself. But then I started to rationalize. A lot of times, the voice of logic, the voice we call logic, a lot of times, not all the time, is the voice of the enemy. Especially when it comes to spiritual things. Logic comes to ruin spirituality. A lot of times. A lot of times, they don't work together. They don't work together. You will be mocked. If you're a spiritual person, you'll be mocked for your decisions, for your views, for your values. It just doesn't make sense. You're just weird. You're awkward. Weirdo. You understand? So the first question that the devil usually brings to people is, did you hear God right? And this is where people fall away from God's plan. And this is what happened with Adam and Eve in the Bible. Did you hear God right? Did God really tell you? The second way in which the devil can bring anxiety, second question he structures and presents to us is, are you sure it's possible? Are you sure this thing that God is telling you is possible? Does it not sound too far out there? Yes, you heard God, but then is it really possible? Come on, you two, reason up. Reason up. Make sense. Does it make sense? Is it possible? That's too much. Is there enough time? Can it really happen? He's telling you this, but are you sure it's possible? And this is where we see this happen with Abraham in the Bible. God had told Abraham clearly, you will have children, and you will have so many children. It was clear. It was clear. In that period, people used to hear from God. There weren't too many voices, not too many directions, no social media, no TV, no radio. So they heard from God very well. They were spiritual. Eastern people, they were very spiritual. And Abraham heard from God. But after a while, the devil came talking again to bring anxiety. This time he came through his wife, telling him, are you sure this thing is possible? Are you sure it's me? It might not be possible with me anymore. Maybe it's my servant. Because it's not possible with me. I'm getting older. It's not possible with me. Not possible. You to think about it. And a lot of times when we begin to think, is it possible? Can it happen within this time frame? A lot of times what we begin to think is, maybe God needs a little bit of help. Maybe he needs a push. Maybe God just needs you to, and that's why we begin to say, heaven helps those who help themselves. So God is saying, maybe you need to be a little bit more active in this thing that God has told you to help him out a bit. Because you can't leave all this to God. It's too big. So maybe, let's make it a little more practical. And that's what Sarah thought. It's more practical with my maid. So maybe what God is telling you is have it with my maid. That's possible. Let's help him to fulfill this thing that is so far off reality. It's so far off reality. And some of you are like that. God he has told you something. There's a promise. He's giving you a promise. And it's clear that God is giving you this promise. The one that's giving you this promise. So clear. But then you're like, how can it happen? How can things change from so bad to this promise of so good? And has given you a timeline that seems so short. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible? God gave you a promise you're going to get a job in a real high level place. And like, look, I'm still struggling with JAM. And even if I were to pass JAM today, I would have to go to university for at least 4 years. And after going to university for 4 years, I would have to do my NYSC and then apply for a job. And you're telling me that I would work in a high level place by next year. How? How can that happen? How can I be employed by the UN? You understand? Me, secondary school dropout, how does that happen? And then we try to help God to put it in more context. So like, maybe God is saying I should do a crash course, do an online, you understand, long distance learning, that kind of thing, Is it possible? Does God need a little help? That brings some anxiety too. Models up our clarity. The third way in which the devil can speak to us and bring anxiety to the clarity God is giving us is by asking us, are you sure you are good enough? Are you sure you are good enough? It's like telling you, are you sure God can see some of the flaws you have? Physical flaws, intellectual flaws, and are you sure you're good enough? Are you sure you're good enough? And we see this in the story of Moses in the Bible. God clearly spoke to him, saw a bush burning without it burning. How much evidence do you need to know that's the supernatural? That happened to him. And God told him, go and do this, deliver this, the Israelites from Egypt. And immediately, the devil didn't waste too much time with him. Came and told him, remember, you don't know how to talk. How are you going to talk to probably the most intelligent man in the world at that time? The Pharaoh, the king of the world. The king of the world. Because Egypt was world power then. See, you can't even string sentences together. You stutter. Who's going to give you any attention? Are you sure God has checked you out well enough? Are you good enough? Aren't they better people? Aren't they better people? Are you sure you're good enough? A lot of times God talks to us clearly, tells us we have to do something, and like, I am not good enough. There are so many other people that are better than me. I am not good enough. I am not good enough. Some of you have that issue with relationships, especially guys. You have a lady, God has put in you an attraction. Says, strike up a friendship with this lady. Strike up a friendship. Let her know you're interested in her. I'm like, look at me. Look at her. Look at me. Look at what I'm wearing. I don't have a car. Can't talk well. She's from a well-to-do family. She's schooled abroad. Look at the people she's hanging out with. I am not good enough. You can't be talking to me to go and approach this person. So a lot of you friend zone yourself. You understand? The best you do is just to be in that friend zone. And you watch this lady just really evaporate before your eyes. Because you don't think you are good enough. I don't have a place. I'm staying with my parents. Staying with my parents. She has a place of her own already. I'm not good enough. Anxiety sets in. And then we lose clarity. Clarity is gone. I don't think I love her. I shouldn't be loving her. She's out of my league. Because you feel you're not good enough. That's something we struggle with too. The fourth thing that we struggle with, that the devil asks us, the devil always asks us this question to take away our clarity, is, are you sure you didn't commit too soon? Are you sure you didn't commit too soon? And so for people that have the clarity and just take the step, you see, those are the people that are, they don't waste time when they get that clarity. They just, okay, God's telling me to do this, I'll do it. God is telling me to leave my job, okay? Turn in their resignation letter immediately. Give their 1 month notice. They don't waste time at the time of clarity. But then after they've done it, the devil now comes with the question, are you sure you didn't act too rashly? Are you sure you shouldn't have just waited a little bit? Are you sure you shouldn't have waited a bit? You see, personally, I'm that kind of person. When I have clarity, my wife knows me. I may do immediately. I'm a do immediately type of person. You understand? I'm doing. When I know that God has told me to do something, I'm doing. I don't waste time. God is telling me give. I've given. Sometimes my wife tells me, why did you just tell me first? So I had to learn to, tell her first. But she knows when I'm telling her, she says, Tola, I know you've already started working on how to do this thing. You understand? You've already started working. Your mind has already started going to work. By that evening, I've started doing it. And a lot of times what we struggle with is, sometime later, like, should I have been a little more patient? I'm sure I had clarity, but then maybe I acted too fast too. Maybe I spoke too soon. I remember when I wanted to start ProUp Masterclass and I just put it out there on Facebook. I'll be starting something called ProUp Masterclass. And then there were all these obstacles to starting this YouTube channel. All these obstacles. House, nowhere to shoot. I had not even thought of where to shoot in my house. My camera wasn't good enough. The mic I got wasn't working well enough. And I was thinking, Tola, why did you put this thing out there? Why did you speak so soon? Why? Why didn't you settle everything first before jumping? Why? And you can see this in the life of John the Baptist in the Bible. John the Baptist was an incredible character in the Bible. It was clear what he was meant to do before he was even born. Before he came into this world, it was clear what he was meant to do. His own clarity was super, super, super clear, revealed to his parents. By the time he was still in the womb, when he heard the voice of Jesus' mother, Mary, he leaped in his mother's womb. That means he already knew that his mission was tied to this person. He was so clear from the womb. That's how clear he was. But interestingly, after he had baptized Jesus and in the public, he has said, this is the one. This is the Messiah. This one that is coming to be baptized by me right now. This is him. And a lot of his disciples started leaving him, John, and started following Jesus. He was a public declaration of Jesus as the Messiah, as the person he was preparing the way for. But you see, after Jesus had started his ministry, John was now in jail. And he had to send a message to Jesus. Said, are you sure you are the one? Are you sure you are the one that I was meant to be waiting for? So at that point, John was thinking to himself, am I sure I didn't talk too fast? Why did I declare publicly? Maybe I should have studied this guy, because at that point, him and Jesus had not had a relationship when he declared that was Jesus. It was clear to him. Maybe it was there, and I thought maybe I should have given myself like a few months to study this guy, see what he's doing. But then he heard Jesus was dining with sinners and, doing, things that he didn't expect the Messiah to be doing. So he said, are you sure you are the one? Because this one you're going around to eat with people and eating in people's houses, this is not what I expected. Maybe I spoke too fast. Maybe I went public too fast. But John didn't speak too fast. He was clear and it was right. But at that point, he was feeling some anxiety. The devil came speaking to him, telling him, you committed too fast. You committed too fast. A lot of times, it's not the case. God hardly gives us an assignment for later. So with God, with an assignment, there's nothing like committing too fast. Nothing like acting too fast. A lot of times we act too slowly. We are too apprehensive. God always gives us an assignment for now. But the devil comes telling us, maybe you should take your time and study. See, I meet so many people that tell me, I feel I need to leave my job. But then maybe I just do it within a year. A lot happens within that year where you're now loaded with responsibilities. It now becomes harder. God hardly gives us a word for later. Most times, if not every time, God gives us a word for now. The last way in which through which the devil can bring anxiety when God gives clarity. And this one is very common. It's probably the most common. It's saying, are you sure you are who God says you are? Now, this is an identity problem. And a huge percentage of people have an identity problem. Most of us struggle with identity. Who God says we are. The devil always comes to model up our identity. Are you sure you are who God says you are? And this was seen in the life of Jesus. It is interesting that at this point when John the Baptist baptized Jesus, he says a dove came down from heaven, or the Spirit of the Lord came down like a dove and audible to Jesus. I don't know whether it was audible to other people. I'm not sure. I've checked that in the Bible. But I know it was at least audible to Jesus. And says, this is my son in whom I am well pleased, who I am proud of, in whom I take great joy. If you look at that verse in the Bible, just check it up in the Bible. It's in Matthew, I think it's in Mark, it's in Luke too. It's repeated 3 times in the Bible. But then it says, this is my son, in whom I am pleased, who gives me great joy. Jesus heard it. But immediately after that, what happens? He said Jesus is led to the wilderness where the devil comes to confront him. So it was so clear that he said, this is my son. It was the first instant we're told in the Bible where God is saying, this is my son. The first instant of Jesus saying God was his father was when he was 12. But we never heard from God. But this was the first time the Bible was recorded. God was saying, this is my son, confirming to him. But it says, immediately afterwards, Jesus was taken to the wilderness where the devil now took the mic and said, if you truly are the Son of God. If you truly are this thing that you believe God said to you, the real temptation there was an identity temptation. Everything about bread, jumping down, wealth, everything was around identity. Is to ask Jesus, are you sure you are who God says you are? If you are, prove yourself. And that's what the devil is telling a lot of you today. That identity challenge. That question, are you sure you are who God says you are? Some of you read the Bible, God tells you something. Tells you, don't fear. You are confident. God tells you, you are beautiful. You are wonderfully made. God tells you he loves you. You are the object of his love. Immediately, the devil will take the mic. He will take the mic through someone, through a content, through a book, through music, through a colleague at work, through your boss at work, through your parents. So, are you sure? Who do you think you are? You are nobody. You are nothing. Through your spouse, through your children. Who are you? Who do you really think you are? What's giving you such? What in this world is giving you such lofty views of yourself? Prove that you are this person. Prove that you are this person that you say you are. Prove it. That's how the devil comes. Prove that you are this person. Prove who you are. That's the question the devil brings to us, to bring anxiety. So one day you're confident, the next day your confidence is broken again. But Jesus teaches us how to get back our confidence. You always go back to the Word of God. And that's why I tell people that are not spiritual, the devil is just going to have you easy meal, easy pickings. There's no confidence outside of God, no identity outside of God. Anybody that is not spiritual, that claims to be confident, is false confidence. They are broken on the inside. They are insecure on the inside. It's not possible. And that's why you need to go back to the Word of God. The Word of God says this. The Word of God says this. The Word of God says this. And you must tell the devil who you are. Continue to say it, even when nobody else agrees. Immediately after clarity comes anxiety. Immediately God finishes speaking, the devil always comes to take the mic. He comes speaking next. I want someone out there to listen to this and be encouraged. That because you feel some anxiety doesn't mean you didn't hear from God. This is how it has been. This thread goes through the Bible. And I'm sure there are other people that can cite other examples. I just chose these 5 examples just to make a point to us today. But I'm sure there are several other examples. Have the courage to hold on to the clarity that God gives you, even in the midst of the anxiety and the questions that the devil would come posing at you. Hold on to God's clarity. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and you'll be listening to my podcast, ProUp Masterclass.